Hi, Jim Conner, Game Changer Silicon Valley. We're here at the RSA conference today in San Francisco. It's a broad conference. I'm currently here with Matt Anthony, Pindrop. Matt, you've got a fascinating technology that I had never thought about. I know it's a vulnerability about how bad guys, if you will get credential and important information about certain individuals and proceed with fraud. Why don't you give us a description of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's great for us to be at the RSA conference because we're a little different than everyone else here. We've all spent the last 20 years coming to this conference talking about online attacks and threats and so on and building defenses against them. But an area that hasn't changed much in terms of defense is the call center. And so millions of calls are placed to financial institutions, insurers, retail, all these different places where we've got financial transactions going on, and every one of us has experienced calling in and having to give information like mother's maiden name and other credentials to validate ourselves. It's a frustrating experience, and the fact is it doesn't actually work very well at keeping attackers out. And so as all these companies here at RSA have done a great job of locking down those online channels, more and more of the attackers, especially the organized ones that are working out of call centers and organized groups, have gotten together and started attacking call centers. They're calling in, they're taking over accounts. It can be multiple step process. They'll change one piece of data, change another piece of data. They'll do a little bit on the website, they'll do a little bit in the call center, but ultimately they come through the call center. So our founder, Vijay Balasubramanian, invented a piece of technology where we could analyze the audio of a phone call and come up with a very accurate predictor of whether or not the caller is who they claim to be. And that helps our customers about 90% of the time identify a fraud call coming in and flag it.
Do you get a voice map of me if I'm the original user, the authorized user? Do you get any voice map from me upon request, or you just use some other method?
So the power of our technology is in looking at a call, even if it's from a caller we've never seen before and have no relationship with, and telling you there's something wrong with this call. There's caller ID spoofing going on. We can tell you things like this particular caller, even though they were using different phone numbers, they called your bank 50 times yesterday. That's very unusual activity. You as a legitimate customer will never do that. I won't do that. And so what we're doing is building these profiles of what a bad guy's behavior looks like and then comparing it to the way that our legitimate customers act, and it becomes a highly predictive way to determine the bad calls.
That's excellent. You and I had a few moments to talk. You gave me some insights about what the average consumer can do to protect themselves, maybe a best practice for self-protection. Maybe you can elaborate on that?
Absolutely. So much of what we do is work with large enterprises and helping them prevent these kind of attacks. Probably all of us have had something stolen out of one of our accounts, and we never knew it, right? Our institution took care of us. They figured out the problem. They made sure that the loss never showed up, and that's great. But the fact is that the attackers call you at home, and they're either doing something direct, so a scam like, hey, this is your grandson, and I'm in Mexico in jail, please wire money, or they're doing an indirect attack. So we saw a situation where an attacker would call into the bank, they would cancel an account, then they would call the actual owner of the account and say, there's a problem with your account, let me get the credentials on that account. They call back in the bank, they use those credentials to get in, they steal the money, and then redirect like new checks, that sort of thing. So a lot of different ways that they can do that, and sometimes they can get some very innocuous information from you, as little as something like the balance on the account, and use that as a credential to validate in the account. So what our advice to consumers is, if you don't recognize the phone number, don't answer it. Anybody that's calling you with a problem like that is going to reach out to you some other way, the IRS, your bank, and so on. The other thing is that if you do end up on the phone with that person, then you say, listen, you sound very convincing, but I need to be sure of this. I'm going to hang up the phone. I'm going to go to the website. I'm going to look up the number and call back. And if you're there, then this will be fine. But what you'll typically find is at that point, they'll either become abusive or they'll up the urgency in some way and say, you should not hang up the phone. We'll send the sheriff right now. They put very high pressure tactics in at that point.
Yep. I'll add one personal anecdote that I had, and that one day I got a call and the guy said, I'm from the IRS, and I could just sense right away this is a bogus call. So, after I said, no, you send me your stuff first, and I'll verify who you are. And he eventually hung up. I tried to contact the IRS and tell them what was going on. It's obviously pervasive. They really had no little interest in doing anything. They said, send us an email, we'll look into it, and that was about it. Any thoughts on that? What a consumer could do to be maybe perhaps more responsive, or are these people at the government just overwhelmed?
So I think it is overwhelmed because the amount of complaints they probably get along those lines. You know, you got 300 million American citizens, and we're all getting these calls. We see that the average bank is getting about 1 in 1,000 calls is an organized fraudster that's trying to defraud them. So they're getting calls all the time, and we know that IRS and other institutions are as well. All they can count on is that best practice from their customers. There's not much they can do. Even if they could find out who the bad actor is, they're likely overseas, so it's very hard to enforce.
All right. So Matt, what's the contact information for you or the company if people would like to follow up with you?
Well, so we're based in Atlanta, Georgia. We were founded and the technology was built at Georgia Tech, but you can reach us at pindrop.com, and any questions you have, info@pindrop.com, and we'll be glad to help you out.
Matt, thank you so much for your time. I've enjoyed meeting you. I look forward to hearing more about you guys.
All right, thank you.